Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Coffee and Something Stronger. My name is Cody Norrid, Executive Director of Georgia Interfaith Power and Light. Coffee and Something Stronger is a coffee chat style interview show where we sit down with academics, faith leaders, and practitioners to talk at the intersections of faith, climate change, environmental justice, and the pandemic. And this morning, we have on a good friend of Gipple, the Reverend Kate Buckley, who is the Parish Associate for Pastoral Care at St. Simon's Presbyterian. Kate, thanks for joining this morning.
Absolutely.
So before we dive in, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into the work that you're doing now?
Sure. I am a Columbia Theological Seminary grad. I did my internship when I was there with Gipple, and that's how I know about you guys and love you so much. So our family relocated to St. Simon's Island, Georgia about almost 7 years ago. My husband took a job at a local bank, and I was a full-time mom of 3 children. And a couple of years ago, I just started to do pastoral care at the church that I actually was confirmed, married, and ordained in. And I love it. It's part-time, but it's wonderful. It allows me to be creative and craft liturgy and love people, be there in really cool moments of their faith journeys. And also I get to be mom and pick up my kids from school and be there for all that. So I love what I do. Yeah.
Well, why don't we start with, we're going to dive into your book a little bit more later, but I wonder if you could offer us a reading and kind of ground us a little bit.
Sure. I will
say a little bit about this book that you're going to read from.
All right, I'll show you the cover. Yeah. So this is called Bless It. It's the book that I wrote from August to September of last year during the pandemic. And the illustrations are by my phenomenally talented cousin, Teresa. She lives in Boston. She did not know she was signing up to illustrate a whole book. She thought she was doing like a few sketches. But so I'll just open with one of my favorites. So they all start Blessed Be or Blessed Be, kind of like modern Beatitudes. Blessed be the sidewalks and trails, a playground for the cooped up, the air conditioned, the self-absorbed, opening themselves up to be ridden upon, trodden down and run all over for the sake of fresh air and sane minds. Kind of when everybody was heading out to parks during the actual like lockdown part of shutdown.
Yeah. Well, why don't we just go ahead and talk about this project, Bless It. And for everyone who is tuning in, you can, the link is in the description for this video. You can click it. You can go to Kate's website. You can buy this book and read more about it. But Kate, talk about kind of how this idea came to you and how it developed.
Yeah, it was very accidental. So I guess it was March of last year, right, that everything kind of just shut down. We were reeling, all of us. I had all the kids at home. We were trying to figure out how to do ministry at church from a screen, kind of before like we had the screen technology. Like we were just figuring out that Zoom was like a thing.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting, I was newly ordained, actually. Or not even newly ordained, newly employed in this position. I was actually ordained during the pandemic. But I was just getting used to, like, I had my new like shiny hospital badge that I was going to go visit people in the hospital. And a few months in, I felt really like secure and like, this is where God wants me to be. And I was sitting in my minivan. I remember it was March or late March. And we had a couple of church members in the hospital. And there was this big sign on the hospital door that said no outside visitors. You know, the policy was it was completely shut down, even to clergy folks. And I sat in my car and I just cried. I mean, I guess it was like a lot of just like the emotions of like, what is going on? But also, how do I start to do ministry when I feel like God put me in this place and now this door is literally closing on me. So how do we be incarnational which is, Jesus was all about intimacy and touching people who were supposed to be in quarantine, right? So I just had a moment where I sat in my minivan in the parking lot of the Brunswick Hospital and was just like, what do I do? So it was a few months after that, we had gotten through a lot of the summer. And I have a really good friend, Dawn Martin Hyde. She is actually a pastor in Columbia, South Carolina. She came to visit me and to get outside with her toddler, and they came to visit the beach. And she was showing me these blessing cards that her church has put together. They have written, and they were like little greeting cards, and they used them pre-pandemic times. They were just, blessed be whoever. And it was very modern. It was for people in their community to be able to like write. It was a set of stationery that their church sold. And I said, that is beautiful. And so I asked her, I was like, can we borrow a few of those for our church? And she's like, well, I go, okay, maybe I'll make a pandemic set. So I started to just write blessings, literally just very short poems, but it could be anything. And once I started, it was like this faucet turned on, like, bless the treehouse, bless the lamp, it was amazing when your eyes are open for looking for what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. So anyway, I just started writing over the summer, and it was it was really a result of my over functioning during the pandemic with all this craziness. And I kept writing and I kept writing. And finally, so I did a pack for our church for September when we were doing a series on the Beatitudes. It was called Blessings in an Upside Down World. So we did give them out to our church congregation, a set of I think it was around 20. And they could prayerfully consider each one and write, send it to a nurse or a barista or whoever. And then they kind of just, like I said, they kept flowing. So once I got to 75, I was like, I should probably compile these. And my poor cousin, she loved doing it. She was kind of, in and out of work also with the pandemic. So she said she had plenty of time to sketch, but I asked her initially for a few.
Right.
And she had done 75. Really beautiful. They're pen and charcoal.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And so the original intent of these, it sounds like, was for people to take, kind of prayerfully consider them, but then to send them back out into the world. So what was that process like, and why?
Yeah, it was so they were available at our outdoor, we were worshiping outdoors during the summer. And so people would pick up a pack of them. And that was sort of, the invitation was as a spiritual discipline, as we work through the Beatitudes of the Sermon on the Mount, and thinking about blessings being sort of these upside down things, right? That all around us, people's lungs are shutting down, restaurants are shutting down, everything looks bleak and desperate and kind of hopeless. And so I'm sort of a perfectionist where I like everything to look really tidy and put together, and everything needs to have a meaning, and I need to be able to articulate it correctly. And I think so much of the beautiful part of the gospel of grace is that it just busts through in these broken ways, where things are dark, where, saviors are buried in tombs. I found myself, my instinct, I think, when I started to write these was to tie them up real pretty and to say, and one of them I do say at the end, may it be well. But I wanted that resolve, that what is this for? Why are we going through this pain, this discomfort, this isolation? A lot of our church members feel isolated, and it has been pretty detrimental to some of the ones who are older and live by themselves. And I just feel like I for whatever reason, I reined in that instinct, and I was like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to name it as challenging, and I'm going to stay authentic to the real life that is, this is a mess. And by naming it, somehow couching it in blessing, there's something really healing in that, or at least for me, there was, through the creative process.
I was going to ask, what did you learn by not only leaning into the brokenness yourself, but this is your work, as guiding people who are in the midst of brokenness, and kind of what came out of that?
Yeah, it's definitely against all instincts that I have, generally the answer is to not fix or to figure out or make sense of. It's generally to jump in with
Yeah.
into the mess.
Yeah. Well, would you mind reading a couple more, and then I have a couple more questions for you?
Yeah. All right. This one is a boat.
Perfect.
And it's, blessed be the drifting, unmoored between familiar past and unknown future, the job that ended suddenly and the one yet to be discovered, between well-worn routines and startling new shores. Okay, so this is one that I wrote specifically because people were losing loved ones and we weren't able to gather safely for faithful closure and community. And this is the drawing for the page. Blessed be the tears that flow in streams of nomadic grief, forced underground and under masks, sadness that cannot be shared or absorbed by the touch of loved ones. May they water the parched patches of now, hydrating a life-giving tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So this one, I was thinking about all the people who are in executive director positions or leaders of churches or making tough calls when there's a lot of like swirling newsreels and a lot of like, let's weigh in on this, right? Like everybody has an opinion. And so this one is, blessed be the decision maker, losing sleep over how to walk the line between alarmists and deniers, seeking to guide with confidence, but also humble flexibility, exhausted by the dance and overwhelmed by the weight, yet bolstered by the thought of precious hearts.
Let's talk about this walking the line piece then, because we've had a couple of other people on the show, and I've thought about this a lot, that art generally can be sort of a place where resistance happens. It's a place that catalyzes change. And so I wonder, like, what is art for you, and what this sort of creative process in the midst of despair, in the midst of isolation, like what has that meant for you, and what's there?
Yeah, it's really good. So when we say, like, just when I heard you phrase the question of walking the line, I immediately thought of kind of standing on an edge, right? So I have felt a lot of, just personally, immense growth as far as kind of similar to when I became a parent, where there's like this lack of control. Like you have this role and these boundaries and this like huge mission to raise this person. And then you also are like not completely in control, and you can't manage or micromanage or, ensure the result. And so much of that I feel like is a spiritual lesson of there was a lot going on during pandemic times and still, and a lot of things have kind of bubbled up through the cracks that has been, COVID induced, like on our bodies, right? Like the racking of our physical bodies in our nation. I feel like that's kind of like broken open this what's been lying beneath the skin for kind of a long time. And so we've had multiple pandemics just kind of erupting. I think it's really uncomfortable, especially for some, as I've described before, like the liking the neat, the tidy boxes, the categories. I feel like art is this really beautiful gift of a place where you can explore and be curious and also somehow start to heal. as opposed to it being a binary either or,
Mm-hmm.
black, white, right, wrong. I feel like I'm kind of talking in like poetic terms, like if
Yes,
it's
well, you are a poet, in fact. So
so yeah, I do. I feel like walking the line for me has been um, sitting on the edge of what is comfortable for me, and letting the poetry kind of push at me. And in the creative process, we're also, our church is also doing this. We're just finishing up actually a book study, a book discussion on Waking Up White by Debbie Irving.
mm-hmm.
And we have had an incredible, wonderful conversation about our whiteness. We're a white congregation, and like every single time there was this tension of like feeling like there was this like we're standing on the edge. I felt like there's this beautiful place before someone shut down, and before I find myself shutting down. There's this beautiful place of like of growth in this place of discomfort. It's this middle liminal gray place.
Yeah.
So that's what art is for
Yeah.
me.
So
Yeah.
after doing this, after, putting pen to paper and letting all these things spill out of you and all the things that you're kind of learning in this process, like what do you hope to take with you now after writing this book and presumably, hopefully getting out of the worst throes of the pandemic this year?
I think what I'm going to take with me personally is the resounding yes that has come back from people's interaction with these blessings. Not just because they are my words, but because I was torn personally about how to put them out there. And there's a vulnerability, right? About like, okay, this is my wrestling, and now I'm going to publish it and put it on a shelf and like be okay
Yeah.
with it. Like,
Right.
I think
You
the
can't tinker with it anymore. It's like it's out
right,
there.
no more editing. If
Yeah.
it's like, but I think what I'm going to take with me from this is the lesson that it's okay to be authentic, and that it is okay to wrestle publicly with things that are hard. And I think the more honest we get and stay, um, the more growth comes from it. Um, and it allows people, there's like this universalness, right? If you get like honest enough, like when we stay up here on the surface and we're all like, oh, well, you're different from me this way, this way, this way, this way. But then you go underneath this, like this tectonic plate of just like, mess. If you go down far enough, I think you hit universal truth. But it takes a lot of guts to be really honest and to not fix.
Yeah.
Right? It's magma down there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, for people who are, finding themselves at the precipice or not quite getting to the edge, or feel something kind of welling up inside of them, some kind of art, some kind of prophecy, some kind of word, what would you tell those people to kind of continue on that journey, how to invite people to the edge?
Yeah. Oh, stay with it. Stay bold. Write it anyway, especially if you think you shouldn't be, can't be, won't say it. You don't have to share it. Just write it out anyway, and just speak your truth. And then sit with your truth and learn from your truth.
Yeah, so much of the work that we do at Gipple, but generally, in the work of the broad umbrella of justice, is like, if you can learn yourself more, if you can love yourself more, if you can live more fully into yourself, like that's the only way that's the way that you're helpful. It's like, be yourself, really learn to do that.
Absolutely. It radiates out.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing a little bit about your work.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I used to ask the first 40 interviews, I asked people, like, what are you missing the most in the pandemic, and what's bringing you back to life? And over again, everybody said, what I'm missing is people, what I'm missing is people, what I'm missing is community. And so I'm grateful to have this sort of set of blessings, because I think it gives voice to that in a pretty particular way, both the missing, but also the need for reflection, and also the kind of the blessing of the mundane. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, would you read us one more to close us out?
Sure. I'm looking for the tree. Give me a second.
There's only 75 of them, so.
There's only 75. Let's flip through them real quick. Okay, here we go. Here's trees. Okay, so this is the sketch. Blessed be the trees, swaying in the breeze, bending to the changing winds, shaping themselves to the new and unfamiliar, yet with foundation unwavering, roots spread out wide and deep, showing us how to be.
Thank you so much for your art and for your words. I appreciate it. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Please go support Kate. You can see the website, and if you want to read all 75 of them, then you can purchase one of her books there. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Next week, we'll be talking with Susan Inman, the Altamaha Riverkeeper, for more coastal issues.